The sound of her suitcase hitting the marble floor of the foyer echoed like a gunshot, a final brutal period at the end of a 5-year sentence. Amara stood frozen, the sting of her mother-in-law's words. A barren woman is a useless woman, still searing her soul, a brand of shame pressed into her very identity. From the lavish Lagos penthouse that had never truly felt like home, she watched her husband, Tund, avert his eyes. His silence a betrayal louder than any shout. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of fertility treatments, whispered prayers at night, and the crushing monthly disappointment that felt like a personal failure. All of it ended with 2 packed suitcases and a dissolved union by sundown, as efficient and cold as a business transaction. The ornate mahogany door clicked shut behind her with a soft, definitive finality, the last note in her symphony of public humiliation. Rain, sudden and torrential as if the sky itself wept for her ruined life, began to hammer the city. It soaked through her silk blouse before she could even process the downpour. Amara stumbled, her heels slipping on the wet pavement, into the sleek, anonymous 5-star hotel across the street, a monument to transient lives. In the hushed, golden-lit bar, smelling of expensive polish and aged whiskey, she ordered the strongest single malt they had, ignoring the curious stares of businessmen and polished socialites. She didn't see the man in the shadowed corner booth, a figure carved from stillness, watching her with an intensity that missed nothing. His gaze traced the proud line of her jaw, now clenched against trembling, the trail of her tears mixed with rainwater on her cheeks, the defiant set of her shoulders even as her world collapsed. As she fumbled in her damp purse for cash, her fingers numb, a deep, melodiously accented voice cut through the low thrum of jazz. "Her tab is on my account." The words were not a question but a statement. She turned, her movements slow with shock. He was unmistakably Korean, but his aura was something else entirely. Dressed in an immaculate black suit that spoke of silent, formidable power rather than corporate polish, he seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes were obsidian, unreadable pools that held hers without blinking. "You look," he said, his voice a low, smooth rumble that vibrated in the space between them, like someone who has just lost a war they never wanted to fight. Amara's pride, a flame nearly drowned, flared. "I don't need charity, thank you." "It is not charity," he replied, rising to his full height. He was taller than she expected, his presence physically shifting the air in the room, causing the bartender to subtly look away. "It is an observation, and the opening to an offer." Before her refusal could fully form, 2 burly men with similarly severe expressions materialized at his subtle, almost imperceptible nod. They collected her water-speckled suitcases with efficient ease. Panic, sharp and cold, shot through the haze of her grief. "What are you doing? Who are you? Put those down." Her voice rose, edged with hysteria. He moved closer and for the first time she saw the details. The faint, pale scar tracing his jawline like a forgotten sentence, the hard, unsmiling line of his mouth, the controlled power in his stride. This was no ordinary businessman. He closed the distance until he was mere inches away, the scent of sandalwood and something dangerously metallic clinging to him. He leaned in, his whisper brushing the shell of her ear, a secret laden with danger and an undeniable command that brooked no argument. "My name is Min Jun. And you, Amara Nwachukwu, are coming home with me." Her protest died in her throat, a gasp swallowed by the sudden reality of his men guiding her firmly but not roughly toward the exit. As the sleek, black Maybach pulled away from the curb, gliding like a shark through the rainy streets, Amara caught a glimpse in the side mirror. Tun's brother, Deli, had just exited the penthouse building, an umbrella held aloft. His eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated shock as he recognized her through the lightly tinted window, his mouth forming a perfect of disbelief just before the car turned the corner and vanished into the consuming Lagos night. The home was a sprawling, minimalist fortress nestled in the most exclusive, secluded part of Ikoyi. High, smooth walls topped with discreet sensors surrounded the property, and men with coiled earpieces and watchful eyes stood sentinel at the gate and along the perimeter. Min Jun's world was one of controlled silence, where every click of a heel on polished concrete echoed, and every rustle of fabric seemed amplified. He led her through a gallery-like hallway into a suite of rooms, elegant, cold, impeccably decorated in shades of gray and beige, with a wall of glass overlooking the glittering, distant city lights that now felt a world away. "You will stay here," he stated. It was not a suggestion. "Why?" Amara demanded, her voice trembling with a volatile cocktail of fury, fear, and residual heartbreak. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling exposed in the sterile space. "Why me? Of all the people in that bar, why drag me here?" Minjun paused at the door, his hand on the frame. He didn't turn fully, his profile sharp against the hallway light. "Because today, a source within my organization was compromised. Woman. For the past year, she played the role of my companion at public functions, providing a respectable facade for certain business dealings. She is now gone. You appeared at that moment, publicly heartbroken, from a well-connected Lagos family, intelligent, presentable, and with no current attachments to complicate matters. You need immediate sanctuary from your shame. I need an immediate new facade. It is a mutually beneficial arrangement." Amara let out a short, hollow laugh that held no humor. "So I'm to be your... what? Your prop. Your fake girlfriend. Wife," he corrected, his voice flat and matter-of-fact, as if discussing a stock portfolio. "A 6-month contractual marriage. In return, you will have my complete protection, a furnished apartment in Seoul with full ownership transferred to you after the term, and a financial settlement substantial enough to ensure you never have to depend on a man like your ex-husband, or any man ever again." The word wife felt like a slap, a grotesque parody of the institution that had just spat her out. The offer was insane, terrifying. Yet, the memory of that slammed door, of being discarded like yesterday's rubbish, of the pitying whispers that would soon follow her through Lagos high society, burned brighter than her immediate fear. This man, dangerous and inscrutable as he was, offered a perverse kind of escape, a rocket launch out of the gravitational pull of her old life. It was a deal with a devil, but the heaven she'd believed in had just evicted her. "Think about it," Minjun said, his tone leaving no room for further discussion. He placed a single sleek folder on the glass-topped console table. It contained a contract, the pages crisp. As the door shut softly behind him, sealing her in the silent, opulent room, Amara's eyes, driven by a desperate need to understand the devil she was considering, scanned the document. The terms were clinical, covering public appearances, discretion, and code of conduct. But at the bottom, next to his stark, angular signature, was his full title, Minjun Kim, head of the Jeomjong Sejang. Her hands were cold as she pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling. Quick, terrified search translated the last 2 words. Her breath hitched, caught in a vice of pure dread. Jeomjong Sejang. Cleanup department. A common euphemism in Korean crime syndicates for the enforcement and liquidation wing. She hadn't just been taken by a reclusive businessman. She was in the gilded cage of a Korean Mafia boss. The rules, as Minjun laid them out the next morning over a breakfast neither of them ate, were simple. Appearances were everything. Perception was reality. Her story was one of a whirlwind romance with a reclusive Korean venture capitalist, a private marriage, and a shared interest in fostering Nigeria-Korea business ties. She was to be charming, graceful, and utterly convincing. Her first test was a high-stakes charity gala 2 nights later. Dressed in a stunning off-the-shoulder Seoul designer gown the color of midnight, her hair swept into an elegant chignon, Amara played her part. Her hand rested lightly on Minjun's arm as they entered the ballroom, a wave of curious attention following them. To the glittering assembly of politicians, oil magnates, foreign diplomats, and other underworld figures camouflaged in bespoke suits, they were a striking, enigmatic couple, the beautiful, poised Nigerian socialite and the powerful, mysterious Asian investor. She fielded questions about her Nigerian-Korean Cultural Exchange Foundation with practiced ease, her smile a flawless mask that never reached her eyes, which remained as observant as his. Minjun was a different man in public, attentive, his hand occasionally finding the small of her back in a gesture that appeared possessive and fond. His whispers now gentle directions in her ear. The man in the grey Seville rose suit with the diamond cufflinks is a rival from Guangzhou. Smile if he approaches, but do not engage beyond pleasantries. The duality was terrifying. In the car ride home, the carefully constructed warmth vanished, replaced by an icy, impenetrable silence that filled the spacious interior of the car. Back within the fortress walls, her nerves frayed from the performance, she confronted him in the living area. Your last wife. The one who was compromised. What does that actually mean? What exactly happened to her? His gaze, which had been distant as he poured a drink, turned glacial, fixing on her. That is not your concern. Your only concern is to be convincing for the next 5 months and 28 days. It is my concern if I'm to potentially share her fate. Amara shot back, her Nigerian defiance rising up to choke her fear. I'm not a doll you can dress up and put away without a mind of my own. I'm in this arrangement now. I deserve to know what the risks are. For a long, suspended moment, he just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the crystal sideboard and poured 2 small glasses of clear soju. He handed one to her. She broke the one cardinal rule. She developed genuine feelings. She began to believe the fiction, and then she tried to manipulate the situation, to use her position to influence a business deal in her family's favor. He downed his drink in one smooth motion. In my world, sentiment is a crack in the armor. A vulnerability. Clouds judgment, and clouded judgment gets people killed. She is alive if you must know. Relocated. But her life as she knew it is over. He looked directly at her. His eyes like dark shards of glass. Do not develop feelings, Amara. This is a transaction. Remember that. And you will leave this place wealthy and intact. Later that night, restless and haunted by his words, Amara ventured to the kitchen for water. The mansion was a tomb, making the muted, tense voices from Minjun's study easily audible. The door was slightly ajar. Peering through the narrow gap, she saw him standing before a massive monitor, his back rigid. On the screen, via a secure video call, was an elderly Korean man with a face like weathered stone and eyes that held no warmth. Minjun's posture was one of stiff respect. "Father," Minjun said in Korean, his voice formal. The old man's voice crackled through the speaker, harsh and loud even from Amara's distance. "This African girl. A smart ploy for local connections. The pictures from tonight are acceptable. But remember she is temporary. Tool. Do not forget your duty. The alliance with Park's daughter is still expected once this current business is concluded. She is from a good family. Pure family. Do not muddy the waters." Minjun's head bowed slightly, a nod of acknowledgement, not agreement. "I understand." "See that you do," the chairman grunted before the screen went black. Amara backed away silently, her bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. The words temporary, alliance, Park's daughter, pure family echoed in her mind, a chilling litany. She was not just a prop. She was a placeholder, a temporary splash of color before the proper monochrome portrait was installed. The reality of her disposable position crashed down with the weight of an ocean. A brittle, silent war of culture clash began in the days that followed. Amara, aching for the vibrant, loud, spice-filled warmth of her mother's kitchen in Surulere, decided one afternoon to reclaim a piece of herself. She commandeered the mansion's sterile, stainless steel kitchen, assembling ingredients for jollof rice. The process, the sizzle of onions and tomatoes, the scent of thyme and curry, was a bomb. But the powerful extractor hood was unfamiliar, and soon smoke began to curl from the pot, triggering a shrieking, relentless smoke alarm that brought a bewildered guard running, and moments later Minjun himself. He found her standing on a chair, frantically waving a tea towel at the ceiling alarm, a pot of slightly charred rice on the stove behind her. For the first time, she saw a flicker of something other than ice or calculation in his eyes, a spark of pure, undiluted amusement. "You are trying to declare war on my kitchen ventilation system," he stated, his lips twitching almost imperceptibly. "I'm trying to taste a piece of home," she retorted, climbing down, defeated and sooty. He didn't say another word, simply reset the alarm with a code and left. But the next evening, when Amara entered the kitchen, she found a local chef waiting alongside a spread of perfect ingredients: plump tomatoes, fresh peppers, long-grain rice, and a bottle of groundnut oil. Minjun was there too, leaning against the marble countertop, sleeves rolled up. "Show me," he said simply. Surprised, Amara guided him through the process, her instructions hesitant at first, then more confident as he listened with focused intensity. He was a quick, precise learner, his knife work efficient. As the rich, complex aroma of cooking jollof filled the modern space, something in the atmosphere shifted, softened by a shared mundane task. He, in turn, offered his own cultural olive branch. One sweltering afternoon, he placed a bowl of chilled milky white kongguksu before her, noodles neatly arranged, with cucumber matchsticks and halved tomatoes on the side. "For the heat," he said, his tone as neutral as ever. It was an apology, a peace offering, spoken in the quiet language of food. She found the nutty, cool, and subtly savory dish strangely, deeply comforting. These small, silent exchanges, a shared meal, a cooking lesson, became fragile bridges across the vast, rocky divide between their worlds. The fragile truce shattered a week later. Amara, growing slightly bolder, ventured into the walled garden, seeking sunlight and the scent of earth. As she approached the ornate outer gate, a new guard, a hulking man with a cruel twist to his mouth, stepped directly into her path, blocking it entirely. "The boss says you stay inside the main grounds," the guard sneered, his gaze dismissive. When Amara tried to step around him, his hand shot out, gripping her upper arm with unnecessary force, his fingers digging in. "Let go of me," she wrenched her arm, but his grip was like iron. Just then, Minjun appeared from the shaded path. His movement was a blur of controlled violence. In less than a second, he was upon the guard. There was no loud confrontation, just a swift, brutal efficiency. A sharp pressure point hold, a knee to a precise spot, and the guard was on the ground, gasping, his face pale. Minjun stood over him, his voice a deadly, quiet monotone that was more frightening than any shout. "You touch her again, and you will not have a hand to regret it with. You are no longer employed here. Get out." After the man scrambled away, Minjun turned to Amara. The protective fury in his eyes was not directed at her, but for her. It was a raw, primal thing, real and terrifying. He closed the distance between them and, with a surprising gentleness, cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over the spot where the guard's fingers had bitten into her skin. "No one," he whispered, the possessiveness in his voice absolute and unsettling, "touches what is mine." The words should have felt like another constraint, another part of the act. But they didn't. They felt like a shield. And the shocking bolt of heat that traveled through her in response to his touch, to his fury on her behalf, had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with a dangerous, awakening attraction. The line between their pretense and a disorienting reality began to blur, dissolving in the quiet moments. During a tense, private meeting in his study with a local shipping supplier, Amara had entered to bring tea, a wifely duty per their script. She sensed the deception in the man's oily smile, the too quick assurances. Later, when the man had left, she mentioned it to Minjun. "He's lying about the shipment dates being guaranteed. His eyes dart to the left every time he says assured. And he adjusted his tie 3 times in 2 minutes when you asked about the port fees. My father was a diplomat. I grew up knowing a liar's tell." Minjun had regarded her silently, then gave a curt order to his head of security. A day later, he confirmed her suspicion. The man was playing both sides, stalling for a competitor. Minjun looked at her with a new, sharp respect. "You are more observant than I credited. Thank you." One stormy night, the kind where the rain lashed the windows in horizontal sheets, the power in the east wing, where her suite was, flickered and died. Amara, left in darkness, found herself haunted by the ghost of Tun's final dismissive glance. Pacing her rooms felt like being in a cage. She ended up outside Minjun's study door, a sliver of light underneath it. Pushing it open gently, she saw him not at his desk, but in an armchair, staring at an old, faded photograph in a simple silver frame. His usual mask was completely gone, replaced by a profound, unguarded grief that made him look younger and utterly vulnerable. He sensed her presence but didn't startle. "She loved the rain," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. His eyes still on the picture. "My mother." She said it washed away the dirty world, left everything clean, even if just for a little while. He finally looked up, and the raw pain in his eyes was an open wound. Amara didn't offer empty words of sympathy. She simply entered, sat in the armchair opposite him, and shared the space of his sorrow. In her culture, sometimes presence was a greater comfort than platitudes. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the storm, the shared vulnerability weaving an invisible thread between them that felt more intimate than any conversation. The next day a delivery arrived. It was a complete set of exquisite pale celadon green hansik, Korean ceramic bowls, plates and cups. Nestled carefully beside them was a length of stunning high-quality Ankara fabric in a vibrant pattern of gold and indigo. There was no florid note, just a single elegant card with his precise handwriting, "For bridging worlds." Her heart, against all her strict internal warnings, did a dangerous, foolish flip. That evening, as they shared a simple meal of doenjang jjigae, soybean paste stew, using the new bowls, the air between them felt different, charged with an unspoken understanding. Then his phone buzzed, a harsh sound on the table. He glanced at the screen, and his face hardened instantly, the softness from the previous night evaporating. "Pack a suitcase. We leave for Seoul in 48 hours. My father has summoned us. He wants to meet my new wife." The slight, almost imperceptible hesitation on the word wife now felt different. It was no longer just a clinical term. It was laden with a new, complicated tension. They were walking into the heart of his world, the source of his pain and power. And Amara realized with a jolt of pure terror that she was no longer afraid of just his world. She was deeply, irrevocably afraid of the treacherous feelings blooming in her own heart for the inscrutable Mafia boss who was becoming, against all odds, her only true ally. Seoul was a breathtaking shock, a symphony of orderly chaos, neon brilliance, and relentless energy that was a world away from Lagos's vibrant, organic hustle. Minjun's family compound, however, was a different universe entirely. A vast, traditional Hanok estate hidden behind high walls in the most prestigious district. It was a place of sharp lines, silent, raked gravel courtyards, and a heavy, oppressive air steeped in history, hierarchy, and unspoken rules. His father, Chairman Kim, was a small, wiry man whose presence seemed to suck the oxygen from any room he entered. His eyes, like chips of black flint, swept over Amara during the formal introduction in the main reception hall, assessing her as he would a piece of furniture or a business report. His dismissive nod was a masterpiece of condescension. The welcome dinner was a meticulously staged battlefield. Chairman Kim spoke in rapid, dismissive Korean to Minjun, deliberately excluding Amara, treating her as an invisible accessory. "She is decorative, I grant you. Photogenic. Useful for smoothing your current African ventures. But a wife. Do not be a fool, Minjun. She is a contract, a business tactic. Remember your position. Park Jun is waiting, has been waiting patiently. End this charade cleanly when the 6 months are over. We need the park's shipping lanes." Minjun's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering, but he said nothing in her defense. His eyes fixed on his own plate. Amara felt the familiar burn of humiliation, an echo of the feeling in her mother-in-law's parlor. But the woman who had been thrown out months ago was not the woman sitting at this table. She had been forged in fire since then. When a spiteful, elegantly dressed aunt, Minjun's father's sister, leaned over and asked in painfully broken English, "In Nigeria, women have many children, yes?" is true. So why you, a beautiful woman, you not have any? The entire table fell into a ringing, awful silence. All eyes turned to her. Amara slowly, deliberately, put down her chopsticks. She turned her head and looked directly at the chairman, her voice clear, steady, and respectful yet unyielding. In Nigeria, Abioji, we also value resilience, intelligence, and strength in women. We believe a woman's worth is not a single biological function, but the sum of her character, her mind, and the depth of her heart. She then shifted her gaze to the aunt, offering a sweet, lethally polite smile. And in any culture I know, it is also considered very poor manners to discuss matters of fertility over such excellent sangayatang. It is said to ruin the digestion. She picked up her spoon and took a delicate sip of her soup, as if she had merely commented on the weather. Minjun, beside her, slowly placed his own chopsticks down on their rest. A profound silence held the room. The aunt flushed a deep red. The chairman stared at Amara, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's shock, a dry, coughing sound escaped him. It took Amara a moment to realize it was a laugh, brief and devoid of warmth, but a laugh nonetheless. He said nothing more to her for the rest of the meal. Later, in the secluded, moonlit garden, Minjun found her by a koi pond. "You shouldn't have spoken to him like that," he said, but his voice lacked its usual steel. "I was defending myself," Amara replied, the adrenaline still humming in her veins. "I won't be treated like that again. Not by anyone." "I know," he said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. He stepped closer, the moonlight carving the sharp, handsome planes of his face. "And you were magnificent." The air between them crackled, thick with all the unspoken words, the shared glances, the protective rage, the quiet nights. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingered. For one suspended heartbeat, the contract, the danger, the watchful eyes of the house, all of it fell away. There was only the magnetic pull between them, a force as inevitable as gravity. He leaned in, his breath warm against her skin. "Appa!" A clear, cold, feminine voice called from the shadowed veranda. Minjun pulled back as if burned, the shutters slamming down over his eyes once more, restoring the impassive mask. Park Jun stood there, slender and elegant in a traditional hanbok, her beauty cold and perfect. "Your father is asking for you in his study. It seems urgent." The moment was severed, but the electricity of it lingered in the cool night air, a tantalizing promise and a terrifying threat. Amara watched him go, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Back in Lagos, nothing was the same. The almost kiss in Seoul, the way he had called her magnificent, hung between them like a third presence, a ghost that haunted every corridor, every shared meal, every glance. Minjun became subtly, undeniably different. His touches, a hand guiding her through a crowd, a brush of his fingers against hers as he passed a cup, lingered a fraction too long. His stares, when he thought she wasn't looking, held a heat that was no longer part of any act. He began to teach her baduk, the ancient Korean game of strategy, their evenings spent in focused silence over the wooden board. His mind, analytical and foresight, fascinated her. In return, she told him stories of the Yoruba orishas, of Oshin's love and beauty, of Oya's storms and transformation, of Shango's justice. Her words painted vivid, mythical pictures, and he would listen, truly listen, his eyes fixed on her as if she were unraveling the secrets of the universe. The final thread of her old life snapped during a public appearance at a gallery opening for a new Nigerian artist. Tund was there, holding the hand of a young, visibly pregnant woman, her smile smug as she caressed her rounded belly. The sight was a physical blow, knocking the air from Amara's lungs. She froze in the middle of the crowded room, the world narrowing to that one painful image. Minjun felt the minute tremor that ran through her. Without a word, without even looking at Tund, he shifted. He placed his broad shoulders between her and the painful sight, his arm wrapping firmly, possessively around her waist, anchoring her to the present, to him. He leaned down, his lips close to her ear. His whisper a private shield against the past. Look at him now and remember this. He threw away a diamond because he was too blind and foolish to see its worth. He traded a queen for a pawn. He does not deserve a single second of your pain, a single breath of your thought. You are worth 1,000 of him. His words were not just comfort. They were a revelation, a reconstruction of her shattered worth. That night, back in the fortress, the dam finally broke. The stress, the fear, the residual grief, the overwhelming, confusing new feelings. It all overflowed. In the dim light of her suite, tears she had held back for a lifetime fell in a silent, relentless stream. Min-jun, drawn by her silent distress, found her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer hollow words. He simply opened his arms, and she walked into them. He held her as she shattered, his embrace strong and sure, his chin resting on her head, his hand stroking her back in slow, calming circles. When her tears finally subsided into shaky breaths, he didn't let go. Instead, he cupped her face, tilting it up to his. His own eyes were a stormy sea of conflict, longing and fear. This, he murmured, his voice thick with an emotion so raw it made her heart ache, was not part of the plan. You, feeling this for you. It was never ever part of the plan. And then he kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a conflagration. It was a claiming and a confession, a surrender and a conquest all at once. It was the taste of salt from her tears and the heat of his desperation, a fusion of soul and Lagos, of danger and deep, undeniable desire that obliterated every last boundary, every rule, every clause in their foolish contract. That night, the pretense died, and something terrifyingly, beautifully real was born in its ashes. The morning after, Amara woke to find the other side of the bed empty, but the scent of him on the pillows, the memory of his touch on her skin, made her heart feel fuller than it ever had. This was real. This messy, dangerous, impossible thing was real. She walked into the living area, a soft, private smile on her lips, ready to face whatever came next, as long as it was with him. The smile died instantly. Min-jun stood in the center of the room, dressed not in his usual suit but in dark, casual clothes. His face a bloodless mask of stone. His father's visage filled the large monitor on the wall. His expression one of thunderous, unforgiving fury. You think I do not have eyes in your house? You think I am a fool? Chairman Kim's voice roared through the speakers, vibrating with rage. This farce has gone too far. I see how you look at her. Sentiment. Weakness. You are my son, not some love-struck boy. End it. Today. Send her away with the money and be done. Or the consequences for your Nigerian distraction will be severe. I will not have the Park Alliance jeopardized for a temporary bedmate. Do you understand me? I will remove the problem myself. The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavier, more suffocating than the shouting. Min-jun turned to her slowly. The hollow, devastated look in his eyes told her everything. Amara, he said, her name a painful ache on his lips. You have to leave. Today. What? Last night. Last night is exactly why you must go, he roared, his control shattering, his hands gripping her shoulders. My father does not make idle threats. He will have you killed to remind me of my place, to secure his precious alliance. He will see you as a stain to be cleansed. Don't you understand? I can't protect you from him if you stay here. Not fully. My power has limits where he is concerned. My love for you has made you a target. The word love hung in the air, a beautiful, devastating confession uttered in the same breath as her banishment. The truth was a cold, sharp knife twisting in her gut. His world, which had become her sanctuary, her unlikely home, was now her death sentence. His love was her warrant. He had already arranged everything with a terrifying, grief-stricken efficiency. A private jet at a secluded hangar. New identity documents. A Canadian passport with a new name. Her photo staring blankly back. deeds to a beautiful empty apartment in Paris, a bank account with more zeros than she could process. "Forget me," he said, his voice breaking as he pressed the leather folder into her hands at the foot of the jet stairs. The wind whipped around them, a mournful symphony. "Forget this life. Go to Paris. Life. Be free. Be safe. It is the only way I can keep you safe. It is the only thing that matters." Amara looked at the man who had whispered she was coming home with him, who had defended her with violent fury, who had learned to cook jollof rice, who had called her magnificent, who had loved her in the darkness. The man who was now sending her away to save her. Love and a fierce, desperate fury warred within her. She took the folder, her fingers numb. She boarded the jet, every step feeling like a betrayal of her own heart. As the plane taxied and turned, she pressed her hand to the window. He stood alone on the rain-slicked tarmac, a solitary dark figure against the glare of the lights, growing smaller and smaller until he was swallowed by the night, watching her vanish from his life. 2 months later, in a small, charming Parisian café in Le Marais, Amara sat by the window, watching the drizzle paint the grey streets. She was safe. She was unimaginably rich. She lived in an elegant apartment filled with light and beautiful things. And she was utterly, profoundly empty, a shell moving through a postcard-perfect life. She had become a ghost of herself, the vibrant colors of her spirit muted to a universal gray. A familiar Korean news channel played silently on a mounted TV near the counter, subtitles in French scrolling. She glanced at it absently, then froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. The headline blared, "Chaos in Seoul Underworld. Kim Min-joon ousted in bloody power struggle. Whereabouts unknown. Chairman Kim in critical condition after apparent stroke." The screen showed blurred, chaotic images. A luxury building shrouded in smoke, men in dark clothes being led away, a fleet of black sedgers with flashing lights. Her heart stopped, a vice clamping around her chest. A cold, numbing terror poured through her veins. Then, a shadow fell over her small table, blocking the thin Parisian light. A familiar voice, weak, hoarse but unmistakable, whispered her name, her real name. "Amara." She looked up. Min-joon stood there, leaning heavily on a simple wooden cane. His face was a landscape of bruises in various stages of healing, a fresh stitch over his eyebrow. His clothes were rumpled, a plain gray hoodie and jeans, a far cry from his tailored armor. But his eyes, though shadowed with pain and exhaustion, burned with the same fierce, desperate light she remembered, a flame that refused to be extinguished. "They think I'm finished," he rasped, lowering himself gingerly into the chair opposite her. His gaze never leaving her face, drinking her in as if she were water in a desert. "My father's stroke came after the attack on my headquarters. His allies, the Parks, moved quickly. They have taken everything, the businesses, the properties, the networks. But I have one move left. One piece they don't know about, couldn't find." He reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly, and covered hers. "And I need my wife." Before the warmth of his touch, the shock of his words, could even register, the moment shattered. 2 black sedgers screeched to a violent halt at the curb outside the café, doors flying open. Men in dark suits, their faces set in grim lines, poured out, their intent clear. Their time, their fragile reunion was up. Amara didn't hesitate. A lifetime of Lagos traffic instincts and months of pent-up fury coalesced into action. She threw the remains of her hot espresso directly into the face of the first man through the door, his pained shout causing chaos. She grabbed Min-joon's arm, ignoring his gasp of pain, and yelled, "Kitchen!" in French to the stunned barista, pulling Min-joon behind the counter and through the swinging doors into the hot, steamy kitchen. They burst out into a back alley littered with crates, the sound of shouts and crashing furniture behind them. They ran, his injury making his gait a painful lurch, her heart hammering against her ribs, guiding him through a maze of alleys until they reached her apartment building, losing their pursuers in the labyrinthine streets. In the safety of her pristine apartment, she helped him to the sofa and immediately began tending to his wounds with a first aid kit. Her hands steady but her mind a whirlwind. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice low. My father moved against me immediately after you left, he explained, wincing as she cleaned a deep cut on his arm. He thought my distraction was removed, but he saw my heart wasn't in the Park Alliance. He allied with them to teach me a lesson, to force compliance. I was grieving Amara. I was not prepared. They hit us hard and fast. I lost men. I lost everything I had built here. But I kept one thing hidden, even from my father. A digital ledger. Not just financials. It details every deal, every payment, every silenced witness, every politician on his payroll for 30 years. It's hidden in a secure partition only I can access, in the server at the Lagos house. Amara asked, pausing her ministrations, looking directly into his weary eyes. I have nothing to offer you now but more danger, he said, his gaze holding hers with a heartbreaking honesty. No contract, no fortune, no protection I can guarantee. Just me. A wounded, hunted man. And the truth. Love you. I sent you away to save you, but I have been a dead man walking without you. Will you fight with me? Not as a contracted wife, but as my partner. My equal in this. This was the choice. A safe, beautiful, lonely life in exile, or a dangerous, unpredictable, potentially short one walking back into the fire with a man who owned her heart. Amara thought of being called barren and useless. She thought of his whisper in the rainy bar, his pride and soul, the feel of his arms around her as she wept, the way he looked at her as she spoke of her culture. She was a daughter of warriors, of market women who built empires from nothing, of survivors. Her voice, when it came, was fierce, clear, and absolute. I am not a prize to be won, Minjun. I am not a weakness. I am an ally, queen in my own right. And yes, I will fight. Not for you but with you. For us. Their return to Lagos was a masterclass in covert survival. Using false passports and a circuitous route through 3 countries, they slipped back into the city like ghosts. The Ikoyi fortress, once a symbol of his power, was now a gilded trap, heavily guarded by Park's men, who were scouring it for any remaining assets. Under the cover of a moonless night, they used a forgotten sewer access tunnel Minjun had installed as a last resort, a damp, tight passage that led into the basement. The house was eerily silent, stripped of its art, its feeling of occupancy gone. They moved like shadows through the familiar halls, every creak of the floorboard sounding like a thunderclap. Reaching his old study, now ransacked, Minjun moved a section of the bookshelf, revealing a biometric safe behind a false panel. His hand shook slightly as he pressed his thumb to the scanner. It beeped, a green light flashed, and the door clicked open. Inside was not a drive or a tablet. There was only a single old photograph of his mother, smiling softly, and a plain black USB stick. And beneath them, a note in Chairman Kim's precise, spidery handwriting. Minjun picked it up, his face paling as he read it silently. Then aloud, his voice a hollow whisper. I knew you would come for this. You always were a sentimental fool, just like your mother. It is your fatal flaw. You have 5 minutes before the thermal sensors in this room detect unauthorized presence and seal the house. Prove you are not just her son but mine. Survive. As the last word left his lips, a deafening, pulsating alarm blared through the mansion. Red emergency lights began to strobe, casting hellish shadows. The sound of heavy boots and shouting voices pounded from both ends of the hallway toward the study door. They were surrounded, trapped in a dead end. Minjun looked at Amara, devastation and guilt etched into every line of his battered face. I led you into a trap. My sentiment. It killed us. No. Amara's voice cut through the cacophony, sharp and commanding. Her mind, fueled by adrenaline and a refusal to die in this gilded cage, raced. He's forcing you to act like a sentimental fool. Freeze. Don't. Think. Her eyes, wide and frantic, scanned the room, landing on the large, old-fashioned fireplace, an ornamental relic in the modern house. The maintenance access for the chimney. The old coal chute from when this was a British residence. Does it connect to the exterior grounds? Minjun's eyes widened with a sudden, fierce hope. Yes. It was sealed from the outside years ago, but not from in here. Amara was already on her knees, pulling at the heavy, ornate iron grate. It was stuck fast with paint and age. Help me! Together, with a strength born of sheer desperation, they wrenched it free, the screech of metal lost in the blaring alarm. The sound of the study door being battered with a heavy tool thundered through the room. Amara shoved the USB and the photograph into the inner pocket of her jacket. She pushed Minjun toward the dark, sooty, gaping hole. Go. Now. He hesitated for a split second, his eyes screaming a protest. She gave him a look that brooked no argument, the look of a general, of a partner, of a queen. He slid into the darkness. Amara took one last glance at the splintering door, then followed him, wriggling into the narrow space and pulling the heavy grate back into place as best she could from the inside, just as the door exploded inward. The chute was a tight, terrifying vertical drop of about 10 feet into a mound of ancient coal dust and debris in a subcellar. They landed in a heap, coughing, covered in black soot. A narrow, low tunnel, lined with crumbling brick, led away. They crawled, Minjun stifling groans of pain, until they found a rusted metal door blocked by roots and earth. Kicking it open with their combined force, they tumbled out into the damp night air, behind a thick screen of bougainvillea at the very edge of the property, mere feet from the high wall. Using a drain pipe, they scaled it and dropped into the silent sleeping street beyond, two phantoms disappearing into the Lagos night. In a squalid pay-by-the-hour safe house in a part of town no one would think to look, they connected the USB to a cheap, encrypted laptop. It wasn't just a ledger. It was a comprehensive digital vault, and the first file was a video recording. Chairman Kim's face filled the screen, but he looked older, wearier, the ruthless fire in his eyes dimmed. Minjun, if you are seeing this, you chose her. You chose sentiment over cold strategy. You walked into an obvious trap for a memory and a chance. It is your greatest weakness. And perhaps the one strength I never allowed myself to have. He paused, a flicker of something like regret passing over his features. The data here will destroy my empire. It will end the parks. Use it. Burn it all down. Then build something new. Something clean. Something that doesn't require walls and bodyguards. And protect her. Do not make the mistakes I made. Do not sacrifice love for an empire of shadows. A father's final lesson. The message ended. It hadn't been a trap to kill them, but a final brutal test. A gauntlet to see if his son had the heart to survive. And it was a surrender. With the data, Minjun, through layers of anonymous intermediaries and encrypted drops, handed select, devastating evidence to authorities and rival factions across 3 continents. His father's organization and the park's empire were dismantled in a series of spectacular, simultaneous raids and internal collapses. In exchange for his full cooperation and the complete dismantling of the network, he was granted immunity and a chance to disappear. The old world, the world of fear and shadows, burned away to ashes. 1 year later, Amara stood on the wide, sun-drenched balcony of a modern, airy penthouse in a vibrant, artsy district of Seoul, overlooking the serene flow of the Han River. The city sparkled in the evening light, no longer a place of lurking threat, but a canvas of limitless promise. Behind her, the sounds of a lively, warm party spilled out through the open doors, a harmonious mix of Korean and Yoruba, of laughter and easy conversation. They had built something real from the ashes. A legitimate, thriving import-export business specializing in showcasing Nigerian designers, artists, and ethically sourced crafts to the Korean market, and Korean technology and design to West Africa. It was a true bridge. Minjun walked out, slipping his arms around her waist from behind, nuzzling the sensitive spot below her ear. The last traces of his bruises were long gone, replaced by a calm, quiet happiness that softened his once severe features. "My mother," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet certainty, "would have loved you more than me, I think." "I know," Amara smiled, leaning back into the solid, safe warmth of his chest. She placed his hand over her abdomen, where a new, secret life, a miracle they had been told was impossible, was just beginning to make its presence known. And she is going to absolutely adore her granddaughter. He stilled completely behind her. Then, slowly, he turned her to face him. His eyes, those deep, dark pools that had once been so unreadable, now shimmered with a profound, awestruck love that stole the breath from her lungs. There were no more contracts, no more pretenses, no more shadows of old alliances. Just them. A Nigerian queen who had reclaimed her worth, and a Korean king who had traded an empire of fear for a kingdom of the heart. They had torn down their old, broken worlds and, piece by piece, built a new, beautiful one together, on a foundation of equals. And so, their story finds a gentle harbor, a testament to the power of love that emerges from the most unlikely and stormy of beginnings. But the world of passion and power, of past debts and future dreams, is never truly still. Whispers reach them that a faction from the old world, loyal to the Parks, simmers with resentment in the shadows. Amara's past in Lagos still holds a surprise, as Tun's fortunes falter and his gaze turns with new, covetous interest toward the powerful Kim Amara group. And Chairman Kim, from his secluded retirement, watches his grandson's future being shaped. His thoughts inscrutable. The greatest tests for a love forged in fire are not in the battle, but in the peace that follows. Can their hard-won happiness withstand the quiet envy of the past and the subtle dangers of their present success? If your heart is invested in this tale of fierce love and fierce redemption, if you need to see Amara wield her strength as a mother and a mogul, and Min Jun protect his family not with violence, but with the wisdom of a man who has finally found his true worth, then you cannot miss what unfolds next. The next chapter of their lives promises new challenges, deeper bonds, and the unwavering proof that some loves are not just written in the stars, but forged in steel. Subscribe now and ring the notification bell, for the next installment in this unforgettable saga is coming. Your next obsession is just one click away. Don't let their story continue without you.